After this nightmare, I couldn't sleep for a week. When Inception came out, my friends and I joked that Hollywood stole my dream and made it into a movie. It's late at night and I'm running through a canyon behind my house. There's black vegetation looming around me on either side of the path, which faintly reflects the whiteness of the moonlight. The stark contrast of the light and dark emphasizes the impossible straightness of the path. I'm running and running, when suddenly, I'm stopped in my tracks by her. Now everything is dim except for her. She's glowing, mysterious white, beautiful and terrifying. She smiles. I'm running away until I wake up in a cold sweat. It was just a dream. It's still dark, but I decide to roll over and get out of bed. I scream. She's there, standing above my bed, smiling. I dash outside of my room, down the stairs, out of the garage, my feet pummeling asphalt as I run down the roadway. But then, she's there, in front of me again, smiling. Scared out of my wits, I stop and I wake up in a cold sweat. It was just a dream. It's dark. I decide to roll over and get out of bed. I scream. She's there again, standing above my bed, smiling. I dash outside my room, run down the stairs, outside of the garage, feet pummeling asphalt as I run down the roadway. But then, she's there in front of me, again, smiling. Scared out of my wits, I stop. She glides away and begins to smile at and talk to a group of my friends on the side of the road. I try to scream at them and I wake up in a cold sweat. It was just a dream. It's dark, but I decide to roll over and get out of bed. I scream. She's there again, standing above my bed, smiling. I dash outside my room, down the stairs, out the garage, feet pummeling the asphalt as I run down the roadway. But then, she's standing there, with my friends, smiling and talking. I try to warn them, but she turns to smile at me and I wake up in a cold sweat. It was just a dream. A long and disturbing dream, but just a dream. It's dark, but I decide to grab my laptop and talk to my friends about this. I almost expect her to be there, but she's not. I start up my laptop and then begin chatting with a friend, asking if he knows anything about this sort of creature. He says he has these dreams too, but it's with a different person, a smiling boy that befriends his friends. Oh no, is this real? She and he are both some sort of vampire? What the hell do I do? Then I remember, I know this girl in real life, and that these were just weird demented dreams of her. I start chatting with her and relax. They were just disturbing dreams and I'm probably just overly stressed from school. She comforts me and asks if I can pinpoint the cause of these dreams. I ponder this for a bit and remember that this seems to have all begun when my mom hung up a mosaic of a house above my bed. I speculate that these might have inspired these dreams. I snap a photograph and send it to her, asking her what she thought of it. She doesn't respond for a while, but after a long pause she asks, "Why do you have a mosaic of my house?" My head spins, mouth agape. My head whips back to the mosaic. I whimper. There's a small figure in the doorway of the house. It wasn't there before. Chilled to the bone, I scramble out of the room and down the hallway, only to be confronted by the same damn mosaic. I scream silently when I notice the figure is slightly larger and closer. I keep running, but my house is now a maze. In every corner the mosaic appears. Every time I nearly run into the mosaic, the figure is nearer and more threatening. I'm at wit's end, on the brink of losing my sanity out of sheer terror. I halt, dead in my tracks, in front of another wall, and now the figure is life-sized and looming in the mosaic. The figure moves, it leaps out and I wake up screaming and crying. In my dream, I woke up in a dark warehouse. It was musty, gray, and empty except for a few tall metal racks which were disturbingly large. It was wide enough that I wasn't able to see the wall at the opposite end. When I awoke, I drowsily looked around me and noticed that I was lying down, really close to a wall on my left side. At a second, heavily lidded glance, I noticed that it wasn't the wall of the warehouse, but a solid concrete protrusion that seemed to have served no purpose but to bring the wall close and give the feeling of towering oppression. I sat upright, but I didn't stand, and near my feet, on the right, were two graspable objects. There was an old piece of wood, not large, and damp and rotting. There was also a small ice pack with a round metal handle, cold and inconvenient to grasp. I looked into the distance and upwards, and I saw smashed window panes, jagged and dusty. Then the horror began to set in as I looked past the windows and saw complete darkness beyond. I immediately got a sense of what world I was in. There was nothing beyond the warehouse, only emptiness. There wasn't even space. I had a sense that if I tried to wander from the warehouse, I would turn to see it still right behind me. Then the thought occurred. I was to be there forever. There was no other world but this. There was no other place to escape to. I was completely alone. I began to sweat in panic. I got on my feet and shot straight up. My head turned rapidly and I kept seeing everything in flashes, although there wasn't much to see. My stomach clenched and I wanted to throw up. Then the fear epitomized as I looked down and noticed these objects. I realized what they were for. The pick was there for me to mark the days on a piece of wood, but there wasn't enough wood. It would whittle away quickly, but time would still go on. Ideas flashed through my mind. Would I go crazy? Would my thinking start to change? What would I become? Oh God, there's an unlimited amount of time in this space. My sweat turned cold and my body was tense. I wanted to run, to jump, to go somewhere, anywhere. I couldn't handle the feeling and the incomprehensible eternity. I wanted to die or disappear. Then my legs gave away and I collapsed on my ass on the cold concrete floor. I cried. After that scene, I woke up and I saw the calming beige of the painted ceiling. It was a cool spring morning and my window was open, letting in a gentle breeze. I stared at the ceiling for a few minutes, unsure that I was awake. Then I got up and I went through my morning routine. I brushed my teeth, ate breakfast, got dressed for work. It was a pretty average day. This dream started out with me hanging out with my family in my living room. My brother, who has a very short buzz cut, leaves the room saying that he's going to go shave his head with a belt sander in the garage. It made sense in the dream. A few seconds later, a red mist starts spraying from the ventilation duct in the ceiling, followed shortly by blood dripping in the vent and soaking through the ceiling, in a line coming from the direction of the garage. My parents and I rush over to the garage and open the door, just in time to see my brother, whose head had just got caught on the belt sander and got most of his face sanded off, get forcefully thrown sideways by the force of the sander into a bandsaw, which quickly decapitated him and also cut off his hand. His body kept standing, stiffly twitching. His neck and arm stumps spurted blood and sanded face bits into the dust collection system, which has been distributing the gore into the rest of the house's ventilation system. At this point, I woke up in a cold sweat, and I had to resist the urge to call my brother at 3 in the morning to make sure he was okay. I can still remember the smell of the blood as it started misting through the vent, that sickening, stomach-sinking feeling, as you know something has gone horribly wrong and you're already too late. The dream itself wasn't scary, but I've since grown scared of the feeling it produced. Let me explain. I remember being entangled in what seemed like millions of smooth, shiny wires, completely trapped. I remember the panic of being trapped set in, very reminiscent of claustrophobia. Then it hit me. It felt like every thought I was having was being screamed at me, but inside my own head, as if somebody had just turned up the volume of my thoughts to full blast. It was one of the most unsettling, worst feelings I've ever had. It's really hard to explain. The thing is, once I woke up, whatever this was persisted for a while. I can best explain it through an analogy. It was as if normally, my thoughts were just a guy, talking calmly and quietly, but in the dream and shortly afterward, it felt like this guy was screaming at me. I don't mean to say that there's a man in my head who tells me my thoughts or anything. That's goofy. This is just my best way of explaining. It has since happened a couple times without the dream causing it, and I've yet to find out what it is or why it happens. All I know is that this dream has stuck with me for over 10 years, because of the unexplainable, terrifyingly awful feeling that came with it. I would also like to add that I remember it almost feeling like I was hearing something loud too, like that feeling of pressure on the ear. Man, it's really hard to explain.